Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by the fantastic Noomi Rapace to talk all about her Apple TV Plus series, Constellation. And starting off, I love the way that Peter Harness, who's the writer of this series, wrote it with you in mind and kind of very specifically for you, but also gave you a lot of freedom in terms of how to interpret Jo as a character and really handed her over so fully to you. And I was interested in how that shaped the way in which you went about developing her, knowing that you had that level of creative freedom.
It was strange. I really felt it was almost a bit creepy when I read the script first because I felt like he knows too much about me. Felt like he's like been looking at my life and kind of using bits and pieces. And I was like, how is this possible? So it was like already kind of when Jo kind of moved into my system, I felt like an immediate connection to her. So the things that I kind of changed or tweaked or worked on was like minor things. Normally I would come in and be like, you kind of gonna change some big strokes and be like, reshape it a bit. But she was so close to me and my heart, like straight away. Like the way she deals with motherhood and her love for her work, her stubbornness, like kind of being a Swede who lived in England. It was just like a lot of things that was like already there. So it was joy. It was like joyful to step in and then just like use all of me.
I love that. And obviously you also have the added complexity of the fact that in essence, you're developing two completely separate versions of the same character throughout. And I've heard you kind of describe it as like Jo A and Jo B as kind of the differentiation, with like Jo A being like the more relaxed and a little bit looser, and Jo B being the more kind of like stringent and focused version. And so how did you set about kind of making sure that you had these two versions that had their own identities, but still felt completely intertwined into the same character?
I mean, they're both me. I did this movie years ago called What Happened to Monday when I played like seven sisters. So I had to really kind of go to different places in myself and just like kind of create like a simple system for myself. So it's because it's both me. Like Joe B is just like a little bit of a harder, harsher, more driven, more competitive version of me. The one that I don't really want to be so much. And then, and then Joe A is more funny. She's a bit more gentle, loving. She doesn't take things as serious. And I mean, I think she's also kind of a more forgiving person. So both, I kind of love both of them, but Joe B, I don't want Joe B to be my enemy.
I also love the way that in the way that Peter's written this show and the story that's being told is there's these really larger than life fantastical sci-fi elements, but it's such an intimate story. And really just at the end of the day, it's this love story between a mother and her daughter and just really trying to find their way back to each other. And so did you find that that really kind of gave you a lot of the intimacy and the emotional groundedness to play with?
Yeah, totally. I think that's really the heart in the show and what made me fall in love with the scripts like instantly. And Joe being a scientist who kind of been trained to look at evidence and proof and, just facts. And then her entire being is saying something else and she can't prove it. She's like, my gut feeling is telling me that this girl is not my child, which doesn't make any sense because it shouldn't be like that. But still, you can't deny what you know in your body. And I think, me being an actress, going away, shooting movies in remote places in the world, coming back to my son, and he's always grown a bit. He changed. He done, he kind of lived his life and he's a different person. And I'm trying to like bond with him and merge into him again. And it's not always easy. So I could relate to a lot of the complications, even though on a way lighter scale,
Mhm. I love what
obviously.
you're describing there in terms of her as a character who's been trained in logic, but just like this gut instinct, because you know, there is an element of her starting to question, is what I think to be true actually true against what everybody else is telling me? But also we see through so much of the series that she just roots herself in certainty and isn't willing to bend her belief of the truth for other people and what they're telling her, even though it's everybody around her. And I was just interested in kind of like getting to play that push and pull a little bit at the beginning, but then where you wanted it to start being very rooted in, I know this is a fact, even though nobody else does.
Yeah, I mean, there's this awful thing of being trapped in a situation, knowledge. Like,
Mhm.
I know what I know, I saw what I saw, but I also know that I sound mad. I know that you can't believe me because it doesn't make sense, because like no one has ever died in space, but I saw a corpse. Like, how do you explain that if you have this, like, you're trained to just look at facts, what can be proven? And then I love that she leans into, it's like the primal instinct in her, and like I know I'm going to trust this, even if it makes me completely isolated and alienated from all of you. And the beauty is when like Alice is also, so Alice and Joe are sharing the same truth, and they don't want it to be the truth, because they want, like, I want you to be my baby, I want you to be my mommy, but you're not. And I think the companionship that they start to build was just so, like, that's the place where Joe is not alone, even though it's not her daughter.
Mhm. And there's something so heartbreaking about the idea of, you know, this girl who looks exactly like her daughter, sounds like her, moves like her, but she has that inkling of it's not her. And so how did that shape the way that you wanted to play the relationship at that point before they reach that moment where they both realize they're not each other's version on each
I
side?
mean, Joe doesn't lie. She
Yeah.
she she just can't lie, which I love. Like, most adults are lying to kids, and like, and she doesn't, which makes me like respect her, because she's like, she really treats Alice like a human. There's like, she's not like less worth just because she's a child. So it's this balance of like, how much should I tell her, like how
Mhm.
much should I share with her? And then when Alice cracks it, like, kind of says, but I don't think you're my person, and like, I don't think you're my mommy, she like kind of breaks the ice. But it's also, I mean, it's heartbreaking to realize that like I'm back in a situation that feels, that is almost my life, but it's not. And like all these little things that make you you. And like the way you just like touch your hair now, and like how you laugh, like those little things, there's like, it's just you in the whole world, which makes you so unique. And that's like, that's when you love someone, you really know the small things, like the details, there's like the uniqueness about you. And then to sit in front of someone that looks exactly like your person, but doesn't do those small things, that realization is so heartbreaking, because it's like I'm trapped in a situation, and I don't have any keys out. I can't get out of it. Like, I can't get to the other side. I know there's another side, and I know I said completely mad, but I don't have any tools.
Yeah, definitely. And even just what you were describing there about Joe being very forthright with Alice, it kind of sounds like that's the way that you worked with Rosie and Davina, who play the two Alices in the series as well, in terms of just really looking at them as like peer-to-peer collaborators, but also kind of knowing what they needed, talking to them before a scene and saying, you know, I'm going to have to kind of be more intense with my energy in this scene. This is what my
Mm.
voice is going to sound like.
Yeah,
And so how did you want to kind of like almost create a relationship that's very similar to Joe and Alice in how you were working
yeah.
behind the scenes with them?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good observation. But I really decided from day one to create a partnership with them and not treat them like kids. Like, we are working in this together, we're living in this together, and I need to make them feel as safe as possible. But also, their truth is as much worth as mine. So if I was like, what, how would you say this line? And if they wanted to change something, I would change my answer or tweak mine. So it's not just me coming and being, the older actress that kind of guides and leads the way. So I really try to be very open, and create like a place where it's allowed to be vulnerable and say, like, I'm scared, I don't know, like, I don't really have the answer, we're gonna run through fire now, and like, how does that make you feel? I'm nervous, like my heart is beating really fast, even though I've done this before. So all these, to really kind of allow imperfections to happen, and just like, we're not perfect, it can never be perfect, so let's just be in it together, and we just hold each other hands, like if it goes wrong, like we're in it together. And I think that was really, I could see them relax more and more, and like they are really, like they are perfectionists, they really want to put, like pull the A game every time, and I was like, we can't, like no one can.
I think it's so wonderful. And also kind of going back to what you were touching upon before in terms of everything just feels so off kilter for Jo when she first comes back. And, I love the way that you've kind of captured it even down to when she's moving around in her house, looking out the window. Oh, I thought the car was this color, but it's actually that color. But then it's even just the intricacy of this used to be on this shelf and now it's over here and it's somewhere different. So kind of everything she has to kind of acclimate to feeling very comfortable with it, but nothing is in the right place. And so how did you
Yeah.
set about creating that sort of energy and just constant looking for details?
Yeah, I mean, that's surely what makes a person go crazy, right? Like, I know for a fact that I hang my red sweater on this hook every day, and now it's a blue sweater hanging there. Like, it's like in the beginning, it's like she is doubting herself. It's like, I mean, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe I broke somehow up there. Maybe the stress was too much, or like, because it's so extreme what goes on up in the ISS before she managed to get herself down. But then the longer, the more time she's down on Earth, she's like, nah, this is wrong. Like, I mustn't got back to like a different situation. And the more she starts to embrace that knowledge, the stronger she gets, but also the more the bigger the distance to everyone else starts to kind of grow. So it's this kind of, I love, it's so unique, like the way Peter have written this, that, and I think everyone, you can relate to it, because there's been moments in most people's lives when you feel like, you don't understand me. I'm saying something and I'm looking at you, but I can clearly see in your face that you don't understand what I'm saying. And that loneliness is hard. And I think everyone can relate to that. Like, I'm in this spot and no one seems to see things that I see.
No, definitely. And I also, even one of the scenes that I love in that vein is the moment where she's sitting in front of the piano, and it's a scene that you're playing by
Yeah.
yourself. And it's that thing of, I don't play the piano. I don't know how to play the piano. And suddenly discovering that she's able to, and then just the processing of, what does this mean that I suddenly have this very astute skill?
Yeah.
So I was interested
Yeah.
in kind of that scene for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very emotional scene, because it's empowering but also scary. It's like you're possessed, and like, how is this possible? This is like, this should not be possible. And then your body's doing something. And what else does my body know? That kind of opens up for a door, like, do I know things? Like, is it more like, what if it's more like weird stuff or dark stuff? Like, what if I know things that I don't want to know? And it's like, when your body, that's like the thing with memories as well, right? Because it's like, for me, I was obsessed with remembering stuff when I was younger. And when I couldn't go back, it's like, what did I do when I got home? I got home, I put my backpack down, my homework. And it's like, and if there was a gap in my memory, I was like, well, I have lost a puzzle piece in my brain. So like, so I could really like connect with like an old fear of mine as well. Like, my body is not my body, or my body is like, how can I not remember? Like, I must surely know there's a script in my head, it's like, and how kind of, how complex we are as humans. And I think that scene really kind of made all these emotions come back to me, of being in contact with something, or kind of, it's almost like a different force is speaking through you, through your body, which is scary but also kind of empowering, because it's like,
Yeah.
mm,
It's so fascinating. And I also wanted to talk about, the difference in filming the first couple of episodes, because it's pretty astounding the number of scenes where we're really just following Jo, and you're filming all of these scenes by yourself, and there's very little dialogue at play, and yet there's so much communicated in your performance in terms of our understanding of the character and everything that she's going through, her fears, the isolation, the moments of trepidation. And so what was the experience of filming all of those sequences in the first couple of episodes?
ah, I loved every moment. I loved working with Michelle McLaren. She's an incredible person, and just I admire her so much. She's this little petite woman who's like with a willpower so strong, and she's so passionate, and she drives the whole team to kind of do their best every day, every minute. And she really kind of guided me into places where it's like I would not have kind of gone on myself, I think. But it was extremely challenging because I was floating and all the floating, it's all about core strength and body control. I was prepping a lot. I was like training really hard. I had to get like really, really fit and work up my neck muscles to be able to hold my head up, and kind of doing all these things and looking like completely graceful and effortlessly kind of floating. And then you're basically holding yourself, in a plank. So, like all these things, like you're trying to act and you're still like, really like tense, because like it's all about like, kind of controlling your body. And it's like a workout. It's like standing in plank for hours. So it was like I really had to work, like first find the physical movements and find a way to have my kind of spots of relaxation where I could just like kind of rest somehow, and not completely not focus too much on the physical part, but like get it into my system like a dance, and then kind of adding on the emotional psychological aspects. So it was a lot of like different layers in me, and I had to work. It was almost like a system. I kind of created routines for myself, but it was also, I had really weird dreams. Like I dreamt that I was trapped in dark places and no one could hear me, and I was like trying to call for people, and I knew that they didn't speak my language. I was like trying to make sounds that was not like English or Swedish or Icelandic. That was like, maybe this is a language that they speak. It was like, my mind was quite twisted when I was shooting those 2 episodes.
And it sounds like some of the situations that you were in, and kind of the way that the sets or pieces were built, that Michelle McLaren, in directing those episodes as well, kind of wanted a physical constriction. And so how did that sense of there being an actual physical kind of claustrophobic element also really lend itself to what you were doing?
I mean, it was an exact like copy of the ISS with the right dimension. So working in there with like a team, full team, it was very claustrophobic and very narrow. And we almost had to become like one body. And it was incredible to see all these people. Like the team was just, I have so much respect for them, and I love how they worked with me. And we had to rely on each other. It was really kind of the most collaborative thing, because when you do fight scenes, you have ground, you land, and you can work, you can do it on your own. Here it was like I was connected on wires with like one guy sitting with a remote control up to the left, and then you have someone else being in another corner giving kind of signs and guiding someone else. It was really like we were one body of movements, and it was pretty amazing to coexist with so many brains and bodies at the same time. But also I was dripping of sweat. Like one day, Scott Kelly, the astronaut that we were working with, he was on set. He kind of came a couple of times to see that everything looked real and like being our critical eyes. And it was a day that I've been on wires for many hours, and I was like dripping sweat. I was soaked. And I came off the wires and my whole body was trembling. And they were like, Scott Kelly's here today. I was like, oh no, not today, any other day. But then he was like, yeah, he approved. But it was very intense.
Right, because he was there as a consultant to the series, and then you also spoke with some astronauts in part of your research, including like Jessica Meir, who's an astronaut, and Krista Fuglesang, who was the first Swede in space. What were some of the things that you really carried into the character of Joe from the conversations of their experiences? Because it's not just the logistical elements; it's also the psychological effect and impact of it all as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trained to deal and act in chaos or when something goes wrong, and to not become emotional, to stay to stay on track and do what you've been trained to do, and not improvise, and not let your fear or panic or anything distract you. And that's kind of that's something that I've really been trying to apply in my own life, because I react with emotions, and as soon as you get emotional, you don't see clear, you don't see straight. And that's something that they all kind of said, how they just like staying simplicity and patterns and routines, and that they've been repeating different things so many times. So if there is an accident or something goes wrong, you will fall back into and kind of physical memory, and stay in that lane rather than kind of getting carried away with emotions or stress, or and that's so fascinating, because it's something that I think most people can really kind of learn from, and how strong they are and how humble they are. They're so humble.
And in terms of just moving around the space in the ISS, it seems like such a small detail, but there's such a necessity to create a sense of familiarity, knowledge, and understanding, so that if you're needing to communicate something in a scene, that you know exactly where she's going to look, what button she's going to press, what would that be doing over here? And so what was your process of kind of getting that level of comfort within the space?
I was in there a lot, and so the ISS, there's a live YouTube channel. You can actually look at them up there. So I kind of became got a bit obsessed. I was like following how they were living up there simultaneously, and just looking at how they moved. And it's kind of less is more, because everything is about like a little push, whoa, and then you start a movement until you hit the other side, and then you can move. So it's like really slowing down, and because I'm quite fast and quite hyper, and everything goes quite fast in my head, and then really kind of get into a mindset of existing almost like being in water, and then knowing the space and knowing all, because it's small rooms that they spend so much time. So, I don't even need to look if I'm going to grab something here. I know it's here. So it's just kind of repeating things and rehearsing scenes, and studying real astronauts up in the ISS.
I love that they have a YouTube channel. I'm definitely going to be looking at that after this.
It's incredible.
And also you were touching upon the physical training for this role as well, and you spent at least a couple of months kind of going through all of that. And it's not even just the case of developing your core and those particular muscles, it's also just the sense of movement and balance. And so what were some of the added elements in terms of what that training looked like for you ahead of filming?
I had like 6 days a week, 2 times a day. I was doing cardio, and then strength and light weights, loads of repetitions, and kind of working a lot with posture, and also stretching a lot, because it's so you don't cramp up. But then that's one aspect, and then starting to working with a team and being on wires and not being able to do, kind of relying on other people. It was like it came down to also letting go of this idea, like I'm strong on my own, I can do it, I just need to work hard enough and prep enough. It's like, no, here you need to really be like, I'm just an arm on a body. But it was some days I was like, I will never make it work. I was so tired, and your body, like your muscles start to cramp and spasm, and just like when you get tired, you start to make, too quick movements, and then the whole scene, like if you start like swinging, for example, the whole illusion of you floating is like ruined, and you need to start again. So it was really about fine tuning, and a lot working on my patience. That's like in
I would be the same.
yeah.
And also it kind of like going over to talking about the way that the show tells this story overall. There's so many intricacies and complexities. And what I always appreciate about the writing and performances in this is it's never over explaining everything. It doesn't need to give you kind of something and then reiterate it or really make sure that you kind of landed it. It's all these little intricacies that kind of sit with you, and then you piece them together as you continue watching it. And I was interested in how that shaped the way that you were playing Joe and what you were able to do in your performance.
Thank you first, because I love that observation. I really love that with Peter's writing, that it's relying on the fact that we are not dumb, you know, we can put things together. You don't need to serve it on a plate with all the answers. And that's really the movies and the series that I like to watch, when it's like I'm part of it. I'm discovering things as I go. And it makes me feel like involved, and kind of triggers my mind. I need to use my mind and think. And I feel like Joe doesn't know everything and goes on a journey throughout the series and is putting a puzzle together. Like, what is the cow? What is the cow doing? And, you know, if I hold this tape recorder closer to it, the sound seems to kind of be working or flowing better or connect better. And the ghost tapes that this kind of old sibling couple in Denmark, like all these little, the puzzle pieces, like the Easter eggs. I love shows like that. I love like Memento, you know, when that came like years ago. A lot of like Christopher Nolan's films, Inception's like, you know, you're like, wait, what? What was that? And then it's like you unravel and you kind of peel off layer by layer. And I think, you know, but the audience needs to be active and they need to pay attention. Which is, and I think Peter relies, like he never treats, he's very matter of fact, and like he doesn't try to sound like someone who knows more or like figure it out. He's just like, yeah, it could be like that, or what do you think, you know, which is like a great testimony to someone that's like so smart. And I feel so dumb. I was like, wait, what?
And even just with the way that you're describing the fact that Joe is going through this journey of really trying to piece together all these elements of a puzzle, that also in turn as an actor gives you so much to track in terms of you've got the two different versions of Joe to begin with, and then what does either of them know at any given point in the story? What information have they understood? What experiences have they had? What memories do they have? And so how did you set about just even processing and tracking what is the knowledge of this character going into every single scene for 8 episodes?
Hey, I was working with an idea or system of simplicity, and just like not try to overdo, rather like strip it down and make it like super basic for myself. Like, okay, I come from this, I've seen this, I must know this, that I don't know, and then leave it to the unknown. Because when you work, when it's so many things going on, and the complexity, and there's so many layers in the show. So Joe's approach and my performance needed to contain like a simplicity and something quite like, to not be too broken or to not be messy, to really hold back emotions as well, and not overdo or overload scenes. Because as an actor, sometimes you can kind of, you know, you want to, you kind of want to go there and, you know, want to kind of make it a bit more meaty and a bit more emotionally kind of rich. And a lot of times here, I just kind of pull back and it's like waiting for, allowing things to land later and to make sense later, rather than giving a shortcut or a little bit of information just to look better myself.
And lastly, in talking about those scenes kind of towards the end of the last episode, I was just very interested in how you found the space in which you wanted to leave her at the end of the series, in this space of, you know, now I kind of understand at least a semblance of what's happening, but also I'm pregnant and, you know, I've seen my daughter, but I've had to kind of say goodbye to her in order to love her to her fullest. And so how did you want to go into those scenes and where you wanted to leave her off?
Oh, it was brutal. I was quite sad. It really had a huge impact on me. I had like a heavy heart when I was shooting that, because it was like this knowing that you will never maybe reunite with your child, and that you have to accept it, and you have this girl that is not your baby but that needs a mother. That choice of letting go, accepting, and committing to something that you know, it's, this is not my destiny, this is not how it was supposed to be, but it's a version of life and it might bring some kind of peace. The other route will drive me mad and I will lose everything. Um, and I think there's a lot of dignity in that choice and in her. Like there's a certain strength to the decision, but also so painful for her. And then being pregnant with this baby, there's like a result of two worlds. Like, so she's from a reality, but in Joe B's body. And then Magnus from reality B is the father. So this child that's growing in her like belongs to two realities. Like it's just really scary. I mean, being pregnant is scary itself. So it's also that is spinning. And like, how will I become a mother and be a mother to this child? And accepting, if I don't accept the reality of what I'm trapped in. So it's just like her decision is so powerful, but also bittersweet and painfully cruel at the same time.
Yeah,
But we
it's so
are our
beautifully heartbreaking.
decisions. Yeah. But I mean, that's something I've been thinking so much about lately, like that we are our decisions. Our decisions and choices is what defines us. Because what else are we? Like we can talk forever, but if we don't make a decision and commit to something, our life won't change. Like there won't be no forward movement. Then you're just a passenger in someone else's car.
Absolutely. I mean, I loved your performance in this series, and so it's been so fascinating getting to hear all of the details that went into building her as such a rich character. So thank you so much, Noomi. I always appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely speaking to you.